The War Council of the Archon Dominion was alive with laughter, a deep, guttural, almost musical sound that reverberated through the obsidian chamber. Every laugh echoed like iron striking iron, bouncing off walls carved with the names of conquered worlds. The Dominion had always taken war seriously, but tonight was different. Tonight, war felt like theater, and they believed the humans had turned themselves into the punchline. Admiral Veckrath stood at the center of the hall, his scaled hand lazily tracing a claw across the holographic display. The projection showed a tiny, fragile-looking formation of ships hanging over a lone colony world. 22 vessels. Most of them barely the size of Dominion patrol craft. This is the fleet they send to defend their colony? Veckrath's mandibles parted in a predatory grin. Tell me, is this some kind of jest? The assembled commanders erupted again in cruel laughter. General Cathor, towering even by Dominion standards, slammed his taloned fist onto the table, rattling the crystal goblets that held their victory wine. They insult us. 200 warships, we bring dreadnoughts, carriers, and worldbreakers, and this handful of machines is what they dare place in our path? They must think surrender is their only path, another officer snarled. Why else send such a pitiful force? Perhaps they hope to negotiate after we crush them. Veckrath waved a clawed hand dismissively. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. We will burn their colony to ash and broadcast its destruction to every human world still standing. The galaxy must see what happens to those who defy the Dominion. The council nodded in grim satisfaction, their laughter finally subsiding into a chorus of guttural approval. But light years away, aboard the USS Lexington, no one was laughing. Captain Nathan Hale stood silently on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he gazed through the forward viewport into the endless black of space. The Lexington was a warship that looked almost plain compared to Dominion vessels, its lines sharp, its armor plating dark and utilitarian, its running lights barely visible. To an outsider, it was unimpressive. But to those who knew, it was a predator waiting for the moment to strike. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet focus. The faint hum of the reactor vibrated through the deck plates, a constant reminder of the ship's power. Ensign Melissa Ward sat at the sensor station, her youthful face tense, eyes darting across streams of data. She was fresh out of the academy, brilliant but untested. Hale had seen her studying the reports of Dominion conquests late into the night, her face pale in the glow of the monitors. Sir, she said suddenly, her voice tight, long-range scans just confirmed a mass translation. Dominion fleet entering system. 200 ships, confirmed. The bridge fell silent. No one cursed. No one panicked. They had all known this moment was coming. Lieutenant Marcus O'Connor, the weapons officer, exhaled slowly and began running a final systems check, fingers moving like a pianist's across the controls. All batteries are green, he reported calmly. Missile racks loaded. Point defense primed. Nathan Hale did not turn. His gaze stayed fixed on the stars ahead, as though he could already see the enemy forming out of the void. Transmit fleet order, he said at last, his voice low but steady. All ships hold position. No one fires until my command. Yes, sir, Ward replied, her fingers moving quickly to relay the order. The Lexington's crew was made up of veterans, idealists, and the last remnants of humanity's battered naval command. They had fought pirates, insurgents, and even each other during the last days of Earth's fractured age. They knew how to lose. They knew how to bleed. But they had also learned something the galaxy had not. Hale turned, his face illuminated by the pale blue glow of the tactical map. They think this will be easy, he said, letting the words hang in the air for a moment. Let's make sure we teach them just how wrong they are. The bridge crew exchanged glances, not fearful, but resolute. They had all signed on for this mission knowing the odds. Outside the viewport, the other ships of the tiny fleet were maneuvering into a defensive line over New Carthage, the colony world they had sworn to protect. The planet hung below them, its oceans glittering like shards of sapphire, its continents faintly lit by the glow of scattered cities. For a brief moment, Hale let himself look down at the world. Somewhere down there were the families of his crew, the scientists and engineers who had risked everything to settle this frontier. They were counting on him to hold the line. His comms officer's voice broke the silence. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, sir. They say there will be no reinforcements. Hale nodded once. He had expected as much. Earth had too few ships left to send, too many borders to defend. Then it's just us, he said quietly. He turned back to his crew, his voice growing firm. All hands, prepare for engagement. Battle stations. Klaxons began to wail across the ship, the crimson glow of combat lighting flooding the bridge. Hale felt the deck plates vibrate as bulkhead doors sealed and reactor output surged. This was it. Moments later, the tactical map flared red as Dominion ships appeared on the edge of the system, 200 glowing icons, forming a wall of death that began its inexorable advance toward New Carthage. They're hailing us, Ward said. Hale's lips curled into something that was almost a smile, not one of humor, but of grim defiance. Ignore it, he said. They already think we're weak. No reason to ruin the surprise. The crew chuckled softly, the tension breaking for just a second. Lieutenant O'Connor, Hale said, load Hammerfall into the fire control queue. Aye, sir, O'Connor replied, his voice a steady anchor against the storm that was coming. Hale turned one last time to look at the stars. The Dominion was coming. The galaxy was watching. And humanity was about to remind them all that Earth had never gone quietly into the night. Hold the line, he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. The Lexington and her tiny fleet waited, silent and still, as the enemy bore down upon them. And far across the stars, in the Obsidian War Council chamber of the Dominion, the admirals still laughed, blissfully unaware that their easy victory was about to become a legend. Space rippled as the Dominion fleet tore into real space, emerging from hyperspace like a storm-given form. One after another, their ships appeared dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers bristling with fighters, destroyer escorts arranged in perfect hunting formation. The void glittered with the light of hundreds of engines igniting in unison. On the bridge of the USS Lexington, every sensor station flared to life. Data poured in, energy signatures, shield harmonics, weapons locks. They're here, Ensign Melissa Ward said quietly. Captain Nathan Hale stood with his arms behind his back, gaze fixed on the tactical map as it bloomed with red icons. 200 ships. A wall of steel and fire. Dominion fleet is advancing, Ward reported. They're spreading into an encirclement pattern. Sir, they're not even hesitating. They think this is over before it begins, Hale said. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. Lieutenant Marcus O'Connor's hands hovered over his weapons console, every muscle taut. Say the word, sir, he murmured. Not yet, Hale replied. Outside, the stars burned silently, indifferent witnesses to what was about to unfold. The Lexington held position, flanked by her sister ships, frigates, corvettes, and a few aging destroyers forming a fragile line above New Carthage. The planet below gleamed blue and green, oblivious to the war rushing toward it. The Dominion fired first. Brilliant spears of plasma streaked across space, glowing like miniature suns. Missiles detonated, leaving trails of light in the dark. The first human corvette took a direct hit, its shields failing in seconds before its reactor went critical. The explosion flared against the Lexington's shields, rocking the bridge. Corvette Dauntless destroyed. Ward called out. Another blast followed. The Nightingale, a medical frigate, was torn in half. Her forward section tumbled silently, spilling atmosphere into the void. The bridge crew flinched but did not break. Sir? O'Connor asked, his voice urgent now. Permission to return fire? Nathan Hale's eyes narrowed. He waited until the Dominion closed the gap just a little more, just as he had calculated. Then he said, very quietly, execute Hammerfall. The order rippled through the Lexington and out to every ship in the fleet. And suddenly, the tiny fleet was no longer retreating. Every ship broke formation, engines igniting at full burn as they darted toward the asteroid belt on the far side of New Carthage. To the Dominion, it looked like panic. To Admiral Veckrath watching from his flagship, it was delicious. They run, he snarled, baring his fangs in a cruel grin. Pursue them. Run them down! The Dominion fleet surged forward, their larger vessels accelerating to give chase. But inside the Lexington, there was no panic. Ward's eyes flicked across the tactical display. Dominion ships in pursuit, just like we projected. They're matching our vector. They think we're prey, Hale said grimly. Let them think it a little longer. The Lexington plunged into the asteroid field, weaving between tumbling rocks the size of office buildings. The rest of the fleet followed, scattering into the dark. Dominion warships thundered in behind them, but they were too big, too slow to maneuver easily in the field. Their formation broke apart as destroyers and cruisers threaded through the debris cloud. That was when Hale gave the second order. Activate the grid. From the darkness of the asteroid belt, dozens of dormant satellites came to life. These weren't ordinary mining satellites, they were part of a secret network laid months ago by Earth's Defense Command. Shields flared between the asteroids, forming a glowing lattice that suddenly cut off the Dominion's retreat. Grid is holding, Ward reported, a note of awe in her voice. They're trapped. Good, Hale said. Bring up the guns. Hidden railguns, disguised as mining equipment, rotated into position and opened fire. Slugs of dense metal, accelerated to hypersonic speed, ripped through the nearest Dominion destroyer before its shields could adjust. The vessel split in half, spilling wreckage into the field. Targets locked, O'Connor called out, his voice steady now. Firing all batteries. The Lexington shuddered as her heavy cannons unleashed their fury. Plasma bolts tore through space, striking the Dominion vanguard at point-blank range. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Vecratha's grin turned to a snarl. They were waiting for us, he hissed. Break through. Return fire. But the humans had chosen their battlefield carefully. In the tight quarters of the asteroid field, the Dominion's superior numbers counted for little. Their massive dreadnoughts struggled to maneuver, colliding with asteroids and each other as they tried to bring their guns to bear. Meanwhile, the humans fought like predators, corvettes darting in and out of cover, destroyers launching coordinated missile barrages that struck like hammers. The Lexington's main railgun discharged with a deep, resonant thrum. On the viewscreen, a Dominion cruiser's shields failed and its reactor erupted in a white-hot flare. Direct hit! O'Connor shouted. Ward's voice was sharper now, her initial fear gone, replaced with focus. Dominion formation breaking apart. They're trying to regroup. Don't give them the chance, Hale said. Press the attack. Cut off their carriers. The Lexington surged forward, leading the charge. Fighter squadrons launched from her bays, streaking toward the Dominion carriers. Explosions lit the void like fireworks as human torpedoes found their targets. By the second hour of battle, the kill zone had become a graveyard. Dominion ships burned, their hulks colliding with the very asteroids that had once sheltered the humans. On the bridge of the Lexington, the crew worked with machine-like precision, their fear burned away by adrenaline. Ward's voice broke through the din. Admiral Vecratha's flagship is signaling. They're demanding parley. Hale stared at the comms officer for a long moment, then shook his head. No parley. Keep firing. Aye, sir. And so the trap tightened. By the end of the third hour, the once mighty Dominion fleet was fractured. Their dreadnoughts were crippled, their carriers ablaze, their destroyers shredded. And for the first time in their history, the Archon Dominion, conquerors of 1,000 worlds, found themselves on the losing end of a battle. On the Lexington's bridge, Hale allowed himself the smallest of nods. They thought we were weak, he said quietly. They were wrong. The battle had dragged on for hours. The void around New Carthage was no longer silent, it was a graveyard lit by the dying glow of 100 burning hulks. The asteroid belt had become a trap and a tomb, filled with drifting wreckage and shattered Dominion warships. On the bridge of the USS Lexington, the smell of burnt circuitry lingered in the air. Smoke curled from a blown-out panel near engineering, filling the bridge with a thin haze. Crew members were exhausted, running on adrenaline alone, but they did not falter. Ensign Melissa Ward's hands shook slightly as she typed, her voice hoarse. Enemy fleet reduced by 75%. Remaining ships are scattered, but, she swallowed hard. But they're still fighting. Captain Nathan Hale stood at the center of the bridge, his uniform streaked with soot from a fire that had erupted during the second hour of combat. His face was grim, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. "Then so do we," he said. Outside, the Dominion fleet was coming apart. The once perfect formation had disintegrated into chaos, dreadnoughts limped through space trailing debris, carriers vented plasma from ruptured reactors, destroyers fired wildly as they tried to regroup. But the humans were relentless. "Bring us about," Hale ordered. "Target their command ships. End this." The Lexington swung wide, her heavy guns glowing white-hot from hours of continuous fire. Lieutenant Marcus O'Connor's voice was steady despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "Main batteries locked. Firing." The Lexington's railguns roared, and another Dominion cruiser went up in a flash of light. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Veckrath stood in the wreckage of his own bridge, smoke curling from shattered consoles. His crew was dead or dying around him. His great warship, the Fong of Night, was bleeding atmosphere into space, her shields long since collapsed. This cannot be happening," Veckrath snarled, staring at the tactical holo. Red Icon's human ships pressed closer, tighter. His fleet, once the terror of the quadrant, was being herded like cattle. "Admiral," one of his surviving officers croaked, his mandibles clicking in fear. "We must withdraw. There are still ships outside the grid." Veckrath spun on him with a roar, striking him to the deck. "Withdraw? From humans?" But even as he shouted, he saw the truth. There was no victory left here. The trap had been too perfect, the humans too disciplined, too ruthless. His comms officer struggled to open a channel to the Lexington. "Human captain," he rasped, "do you hear me?" On the Lexington's bridge, Ward turned. "Admiral Veckrath is hailing us, sir." Hale nodded once. "Put him through." The viewscreen flickered, and the battered form of Veckrath appeared, his armor scorched, one eye clouded with blood. He bared his fangs. "What are you?" he demanded. His voice was half fury, half disbelief. "No world has ever fought like this. No species has ever turned the tide against the Dominion in a single day. What are you?" Hale stepped closer to the screen, his expression calm, almost cold. "We are Earth," he said. "And you should have left us alone." Then he gave the order. "All batteries, fire." The Lexington unleashed her final broadside, a storm of plasma and hypervelocity slugs that tore through the Fong of Night. The Dominion flagship shuddered, split along its spine, and then exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit the void. When the light faded, there was silence. The remaining Dominion ships broke and ran, desperate to escape the kill box before the humans could close it again. Those that fled would carry the story of this day back to the Dominion's core worlds. But for the humans, the fight was not over until the last threat was gone. "Press pursuit," Hale ordered. "Force them toward the gravity well." One by one, the surviving Dominion destroyers and frigates were driven toward the system's star. Their drives overheated, their trajectories failed, and they were swallowed by the blazing corona. The gravity well claimed them without mercy. At last, there were no more enemy contacts on the tactical map. Ward slumped back in her chair, tears streaking the grime on her face. "Sir, that's it. We have total control of the system." For a long moment, no one spoke. The bridge was silent except for the faint hiss of the ventilation systems. Then Hale exhaled slowly. "Stand down from battle stations," he said. "All ships, cease fire." The Lexington's lights shifted from crimson back to soft white. The wail of the klaxons faded, replaced by the low hum of the engines. The crew sat in stunned quiet, the weight of what they had just survived pressing down on them. O'Connor leaned back in his chair, running a hand down his face. "God," he muttered. "We actually did it." Hale looked around at his bridge crew, the soot-streaked faces, the tired eyes, the men and women who had just faced down an empire and lived. "No," he said softly. "We didn't win. We survived." He turned toward the viewport, where the wreckage of 200 Dominion ships drifted in the void. Beyond it, New Carthage shone peacefully, its surface untouched. "Transmit to Earth command," Hale said quietly. "Tell them the first battle of New Carthage is over. Tell them humanity still stands." Ward nodded, wiping her face as she began transmitting the message. Hale's gaze lingered on the stars, his expression hardening. He knew the Dominion would return. They would come with more ships, more firepower, more vengeance. But now, they would come with fear as well. The Lexington turned slowly, her engines glowing as she led the battered fleet back toward New Carthage. Rescue craft darted between the wrecks, searching for survivors. Across the fleet, wounded ships signaled their status, their crews refusing to give in to despair. For the first time since the war had begun, hope flickered. As the Lexington descended toward orbit, Hale allowed himself a final thought before the work of rebuilding began. The galaxy will never laugh at us again. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, in the halls of the Dominion's War Council, the echoes of that laughter had already gone silent.